Alright, what's up guys? This is bluetea-TCG back with another Vanguard video. This one is going to be a combo video to accompany the deck profile I did for Silver Thorns. So I'm just basically going to show a couple of combos that we usually go into for this deck. The first one I'm going to show here is a combo that involves the Lolotte starter rather than the Emil starter, so do make sure to keep that in mind. If you're running the Lolotte starter, this is the combo that you typically go into. This combo basically shows you how to get a grade 3 into your hand guaranteed, and this is the hand we start out with. All you actually need in your hand is the one Lilian. Lilian is what allows us to get this combo off. Of course, you also need one card in damage zone, which we're able to get, but I do want to show the full sequence so that you guys are aware of all that we need. And honestly, the rest of what's in our hand is not important, except for a card, of course, that you need to ride into off your grade 1, which, you know, hopefully you get Irina in your hand because she is the best ride target. But let's go ahead and show the combo here. So we're going to draw for turn. We drew into Irina. We're going to ride Irina. You can usually call Lolotte to the back row rearguard circle behind one of the rear guards rather than the vanguard. It doesn't really matter though. And then of course you pass turn. Your opponent draws, they ride, and then let's say they attack you and they give you a damage. So we're just gonna check one damage. We got Cerne, and then we draw for turn. So in this case, we want to ride into the Lilian, and here's how we're gonna sequence this because we have Irina as a grade 1. We're gonna ride Lilian. We're going to put both Lilian and Irina in standby, but we're going to resolve Irina first. So Irina allows us to check the top 3. So we got 1, 2, 3. So look, we have 2 Silver Thorns. We're going to put both the Silver Thorns in the soul, and then we're going to put the other one at the bottom of the deck. And then because we put 2 Silver Thorns in the soul, we're going to draw a card. So we drew Anna. And then next, we're going to use Lilian. Counterblast. And then search our deck for any grade 3 that you like. Typically, I like going into Venus Luquier because she's the best grade 3 ride target that we have. So we got Venus Luquier. We're going to put her in the soul and shuffle the deck. And then we're going to give the deck a cut. Put her in the soul. And now with Lolotte's skill, as long as we drop another rearguard, which we're going to do, we're going to drop, let's say, looking at the soul here, it doesn't really matter too much what we drop, but let's say we drop a Anna. We're going to put Anna on the rearguard circle. And then, of course, we attack with the Vanguard, yada, yada, yada. We drive check, okay? And then it doesn't matter whether you attack with this, but at the end of the turn, you're going to make sure to use the Lolotte's skill by putting her and another rearguard into the soul. Then we countercharge, and then we add a grade 3 from our soul to our hand, which is the grade 3 we got off of Lilian. So with this combo, we're able to get a grade 3 guaranteed to our hand as long as we have 1 damage and we have a Lilian in our starting hand. So with that combo, of course, we're able to get things started on the right footing. And look, we have a decent hand size as well because of Irina as well. So that's the first combo. Let's go ahead and show a couple more combos here. So for our next combo, we're going to have Emil as a starter. Emil is generally your best starter for building up that soul early game. And for this combo, we're going to need to have a solid grade 3 turn with Venus Luquier. And Venus Luquier really needs to have a soul that is sufficiently built up. So we're going to use Emil for the starter for this one. And for this combo, I'm going to show a full sequence of grade 1 to grade 3, just to show that we are doing this properly here. So let's go ahead and draw our starting turn. Well, first, let's shuffle this up a bit. And then we're going to draw our starting hand. We'll do the whole redraw process as well for this one. And typically, using the Emil as a starter is your best bet, especially against clans against which you know it's going to be a matchup where they can retire your rearguard, because typically if they can retire Lolotte before you even pull it off, then that's really bad because you don't get to have Lolotte for the rest of the game. But anyway, for this one we're using Emil, so it's no big deal. We're going to draw our starting hand. All right, that's our starting hand. Not very good, but it's okay. We're going to mulligan back these. So we're hoping to get a grade 2 that we can sufficiently ride into. Typically, it doesn't really matter what you ride into, but since we have Anna, I do want to be able to see either a Lilian or a Marichka here. So let's put back these 3. And then we're going to draw back 3 more. 1, 2, 3. So we did get the Lilians, which is great. With the Lilian plus the Anna, we're able to get a card from deck to soul for free. And in this case, that's usually going to be Lolotte. And we're hoping that Emil will also give us sufficient soul buildup by the time we get to Venus Luquier. So let's go ahead and cut this, and then we'll begin. Oops. All right. stand up the Vanguard. Okay, draw for turn. So let's say we go first, just to keep things simple. So we're going to ride the Ana, and then right away we're going to use Emil's skill. It's an activated ability, so that's of course during the main phase. We're going to check the top 5, put up to 1 grade 1, grade 2, grade 3 in the soul, and the rest go to the bottom. And looking at this is actually a pretty good, Emil top 5. I think basically our two choices are between Salvia and Upright Lion, and considering the ratios that we're running them at in this deck, I think we're going to go ahead and do the Salvia instead. So they don't actually go to the bottom. We do have to shuffle after using Emil, so let's go ahead and shuffle this up. And just a reminder, if you haven't already checked the deck profile, please do so. It'll be linked in the description. All right. Go ahead and cut that. All right, and then after that, we're done with our turn. So we pass it over to our opponent. They draw, they ride. Let's say they attack and their attack hits, so we get a damage. We'll damage check. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and draw for our turn. And wow, off the top, we got a Marichka. So that's actually perfect because Marichka is technically the best grade 2 ride as well. And especially with the Ana as their Vanguard, we're able to use both Lilian and Marichka in the same turn. So it's perfect. So we're going to ride the Marichka. We're going to first, so we have 2 abilities in standby here. The Countercharge from Ana and the Counterblast from Marichka. So obviously we're going to use the Counterblast first. Counterblast 1, Soul Charge 3. And that's a great Soul Charge because we Soul Charged 3 Silver Thorns, one of which was Lolotte. So because of that great Soul Charge, we now do not need to get Lolotte into the Soul by Lilian, which means Lilian's going to probably search for something that's a little more impactful for our grade 3 turn involving Venus Luquier. So because we Soul Charged 3 Silver Thorns, we're going to draw a card. And then Ana is going to let us countercharge that back. So now we're going to main phase. Let's go ahead and call the Lilian. Let me move these over a little bit. All right, and then we're going to use Lilian's skill in place, Counterblast 1. And let me check our hand quickly to know what we're going to look for. I think the best thing to look for here, since we already have Salvia in the Soul, it's probably going to be an Upright Lion, I would have to say. Let me check one more time. Yeah, I think Upright Lion or Dorian is probably the best pick. To be honest, we can probably just do Dorian here because Dorian is a 1-of in the deck. And I think we have multiple chances to see Upright Lion in the Soul at some point. So we're going to go ahead and get that Dorian in the Soul. And I do think that Luquier Reverse is also a fair option to do because she can ride herself from Soul, giving you another Excel marker early game. But Venus Luquier allows us to put some pressure on our opponent all the same. So I am a huge fan of that option as well. All right, we gave it a cut, put this in the Soul. And the goal here is to get the countercharge back, but of course, since we don't have Zelma in the hand, we won't be able to do so with this current situation, but it's not a big deal. We'll be able to get that hopefully next time. So we can go ahead and attack the Vanguard. Of course, they decide what they want to do with that. We drive check. We got the Upright Line, which is not bad. And then, of course, we pass turn. They do their thing. Let's say they attack. Typically, you might want to move this back so that they just don't attack this one. They don't damage deny you because, again, we didn't really make use of the Lilian. So you can just move this back. And then, of course, now if they want to attack and get that drive check, they have to attack our Vanguard, which, of course, we don't guard. They do their drive check. We damage check. We got a Zelma. Unfortunate, but we do have a Zelma in the Soul already, so it's not a huge deal. Let's go ahead and stand and draw. So now we've got a couple of options. Well, one option really, but after we ride the Venus Luquier, we have a couple of options. Do we want to go for Excel 1 here or Excel 2? Now, typically for this clan, you want to do Excel 1 because Excel 1 allows you to cycle through your deck a lot more, which plays very well with Emil. So I'm going to choose Excel 2, but Excel 1 also does allow you to get that extra 10k, which can help against Force Clans if you know you're playing against Force Clan. But again, I do think Excel 2 is good enough for most games. So let's go ahead and get that Excel marker there, and then we draw a card. And look at that, we got a Dixie, which is perfect. So now we're going to go into main phase. We're going to take a look at our Soul here. So this is important, right? This is our main combo that we're about to go into. So it's very important not to miss a step here, just so that we can get the most out of what we got in the Soul right now. So I think we can start here by calling Upright Lion from Soul, just to make sure that's on the field. And we've got the Dixie in our hand to be able to do that. So let's go ahead and do that. And we also actually, sorry, I said Upright Lion from Soul, but it's actually already in our hand. So that does save us a couple of extra steps there. So let's go ahead and call the Upright Lion from hand to the rearguard circle. And I do think the best place to play the Upright Lion is on the Excel circle, because typically with the main circles on the field, you'll keep like exchanging them via Marichka, via Zelma. So you don't want to put Upright Lion on those circles just in case it gets retired, you know, if you mess up your combo. Well, let's go ahead and decide whether we want to use Dixie or we want to get something on the soul. I do not think we should use Lilian because we are a little low on Counterblast, but let's go ahead and use the Dixie now. So we're going to play the Dixie, use its skill, put it on the top of the deck, shuffle, and then we call a Silver Thorn from our soul to rearguard circle. So in this case, I want to call Emil because I do want to see a couple more things in the soul here. We can also call Zelma, but you know, I don't think it's necessary either. So we're going to call Emil, and then we're going to use Emil's skill right away. Put it in the soul, check the top 5. We're looking for an Upright Lion, and perfect, we got an Upright Lion. That's pretty much all we needed, so I'm just going to only put the Upright Lion. We could have also put the Irina in the soul too, but I don't think it's necessary to be that aggressive with filtering at this stage of the game. I think all we're trying to see here is combo pieces in the soul. And of course, you don't want to deck yourself out sooner than you need to. Late game though, of course, you do want to filter out so that you're only looking for triggers, but I think at this stage, it's okay to just get the combo pieces in there. So now we're pretty much sufficiently set up. We've got the Upright Lion for future turns when we want to get those Excel markers. Now let's go ahead and activate Venus Luquier's skill by counterblasting 1 card. Discarding a card from our hand, we're going to discard the Lilian. And then we're going to be able to call any number of units to our front row rearguard circles. Let's go ahead and call the Marichka right there. And we're going to call the Zelma right here. Or Zelma, I said. I meant Anna, pardon me. So here's the way we sequence this from here, okay? We have 2 abilities in standby after filling our front row. We have another ability in standby by Upright Lion, which triggered twice. So let's go ahead and first do the Upright Lion because Upright Lion gets power numerous times. Not to mention that it's going to be hard to keep track of if we do it later. So I'm going to go ahead and get my dice for that. An Upright Lion on these kinds of turns is going to be stacked. So just do make sure to keep track of those with dice if necessary. All right, so now that we've got our 2 Upright Lion triggers there, we're now going to go ahead and use Marichka, which when placed from soul by the ability of your Vanguard Silver Thorn, we're going to call a grade 2 or greater from our soul to rearguard circle in the same column. So we're going to go ahead and call Selvia in the same column, but in the back rearguard circle. Let me move these down a little bit. All right. Then we're going to go ahead and so now Selvia's skill is in standby, but Anna's skill is also still in standby. So what we want to do here is we want to use Anna's skill to put both her and Marichka back in the soul. That way we're able to free up some spaces on our field. So we're going to put this into soul, and we're going to countercharge. And now, of course, we had Upright Lion in standby because it was placed because Selvia was placed from soul. So we're going to give that +3. And then we're going to use Selvia here to counterblast 1 when it was placed to call 2 more. So now we're going to call pretty much anything plus Zelma. So we're going to call, let's say we call Lolotte. And let's say we call Zelma. All right. So now we've called 2. Upright Lion is going to get another +3 twice, so it's going to get +6 in total. And then we're going to use Zelma to put Selvia back in the soul. And we're gonna call anything here. It doesn't really matter what we call. With this setup, you can either decide to call something that will give you an extra rearguard for your extra rearguard to get the Excel marker at the end of the turn, or you can decide to prioritize something like Dorian to get the card draw if you know that you're going to get an Excel marker later on when you go into your Darklord Princess stride. So in this case, I actually think most of the time it's better to do Dorian to get the extra card draw. However, notice that we don't have all the rearguard spaces filled up with this current board state, so we probably will need to call something from hand in order to make up for that, which is fine, but we're going to go ahead and call the Dorian off of Zelma. So now Upright Lion's going to get another +3. And now all of our front row rearguard circles are filled up. Our front row is going to get +5 due to Venus Luquier's skill. So that's going to be very important, but we'll go ahead and mark that with a 5 in front of Venus Luquier. You guys can see that. And then we're going to move the Zelma behind the Lilian. And then from hand, we're going to call the Anna, okay? So now this is our board setup for our first grade 3 turn. Our opponent's at grade 2, keep that in mind. So you do want to make sure you really think about whether you're gonna rush them down with this board, or you're just gonna keep it safe, keep it simple. But basically we're gonna use this to take advantage of them and get our card draw at the same time. So let's first start by attacking with the Vanguard. This is going to be 17 plus 5 is 22. So they decide to do whatever they want. Then we drive check. First check is a Zama. Second check is... well, okay, second check was an over trigger. So obviously that's going to change things a bit. But, you know, over triggers are just part of the game, sadly. So I think the best places to put the over trigger here are on the Dorian and the Lilian. Because upright line's a little big already. But Dorian and Lilian are not as big, so it's going to make them a little bigger. So we'll remove the over trigger. We're going to draw a card, and both of these have 100 mil. And that completes our drive check. So they decide what they want to do from there. They'd have to PG both of these or take them, so we're going to go ahead and attack with both of them. And Lilian would get an extra plus 10 because we do have 4 different names of Silver Thorn in our soul. But not that it matters because it does have 100 mil backed on it, so... Then we're going to attack with the upright line, which is on 18 plus 9, 27 plus 5, 32 plus 5, 37. So upright line's on 37k. You see how big he's gotten, and we haven't really done that much. I mean, this is a stack of 3 6s, and we can get the stack to much higher on our stride turns as well as future turns late game. So keep in mind that the potential of upright line, this is just a glimpse of it. So this is our first grade 3 turn completed. We're going to go ahead and remove these dice. And then we're going to complete our end of turn sequence. So to start our end of turn sequence, we have to keep in mind the auto abilities that we have in standby to resolve here. We've got the Venus Luquier, we have to finish the Venus Luquier skill, but Venus Luquier skill only applies typically when you have rearguards on your circles, and you only get that excel when you have 4 or more rearguard circles. So the decisions behind this is whether you want to prioritize excel circles or you want to prioritize card draw. I personally think early game card draw is more important. Excel circles can always be gotten later on with Darklord Princess and such into EVET, but also this deck doesn't need much Excel circles in order to do what it does best. So let's go ahead and prioritize the Dorian here. We're going to first use the Lolotte skill to put Dorian and her in the soul, and then get that counter charge 1, and add a grade 3 from our soul to hand. So we're going to add the Silver Thorn Dragon Tamer Luquier to our hand. And then next, we have Dorian's skill in standby. So we're going to go ahead and put all the rearguards we have in the soul. And because this is 4, we're able to draw 2. And then because we put 4 or more, we add a grade 3 from our soul to our hand. If we'd like, we don't have to. But looking at the soul here, I don't really want to add Dorian to my hand. Most of the time, it's not a bad idea. But sometimes it's just good to have some flexibility in terms of going for Coulthard from our G zone, which requires having 4 different grades in your soul. But of course, we're not at GP1 just yet. Plus, looking at our hand, we don't even have a heal trigger. Well, we do have 1 heal trigger, but the heal trigger is not going to be spent on going into Coulthard anyway. So I do think it's fine to add the grade 3 to our hand, which is Dorian. So now you see kind of how the first grade 3 turn goes. It's pretty insane how much advantage we've built up. We've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 cards in hand. Plus, we've got plenty of grade 3s to discard at strike cost, as well as the fact that even though we didn't go for the extra Excel marker, we can always reride into the Venus Luquier and get an extra Excel marker in order to go for strong plays in future turns. But in this case, I've just shown that the grade 3 turn can be strong. So let's go ahead and show a combo involving our grade 4 stride turns with Darklord Princess and Harri. Alright, so now that we've completed our defense against our opponent's first stride turn, we've got, of course, a face-up Wandering Dragon Energizon that we use to guard, as well as this is our drop zone. We discarded a heal trigger in order to get that Wandering Dragon off, and we happened to soul charge another heal trigger, which was great because we were able to guard with that. Not to mention the extra 10k really helped out with defending, and we got another card in our hand, which was a Dixie. So this Dixie is going to be great for our combo turn here. Let's go ahead and start our turn, stand and draw. We got another Dixie, which is great. But we're going to ride into, so you have a couple options. You can either ride into OG Luquier if you're going for not OG Luquier, G-Era Luquier, if you're trying to go for a Luquier stride turn. But in this case, I think it's better to go into Darklord Princess. So let's go ahead and ride our Venus Luquier and get that Excel marker. That way we draw a card as well. And then we're going to go ahead and stride. I think the best card to discard is the GR Luquier, sadly, but no problem. We do have to discard something in order to go for strides. Let's go ahead and get that Darklord Princess in here. And now do keep in mind, the important part about these combos is that our stride inherits the name of our heart unit. So having the name Silver Thorn and Luquier is going to allow us to do our whole combo that this deck is able to do. All right, so now we're going into the main phase. Let me take a look at our soul quickly here so that you guys are able to see. So we've got quite a good soul. We've got the upright lions. We got 2 upright lions. Plus we got an Anna, we got a Marichka, we got a Zelma, all of which is great, and we've got a Lolotte for the end of turn. So I do think the best stride to go into off of Darklord Princess here is going to be Harri, especially given that we have enough counterblast for it as well. So let's start by calling a Serne behind the Darklord Princess. That way we'll be able to get multi-attacks in. And then we're also going to call Dixie. So Dixie's skill we're going to activate. Because we do have a Luquier Vanguard, it was inherited from the Heart card. We're going to go ahead and put it on the top of the deck and shuffle. And then we're going to call a Silver Thorn from our soul to rearguard circle, which of course is going to be Upright Lion. We can also actually call Selvia, which in some cases can be better. But I think what we're going to do is actually call Selvia on the second Dixie. So I'm going to go ahead and call the Upright Lion. Upright Lion's not going to get any power just yet, not until we call another Silver Thorn. But we're going to go ahead and call the second Dixie, use that Dixie skill, and then we got to shuffle again, of course. Sorry about that, but that's just the way it goes with these recursive effect triggers. So we're going to cut, and then we're going to call Selvia from our soul this time. And then we're going to use Selvia's skill on place. We're going to counterblast 1. And then we're going to call 2 Silver Thorns from our soul to rearguard circle. So just taking a look at our hand there. So we're going to call Upright Lion first. And then we're going to call Zelma next. Just trying to look at what else we've got here. All right, we do have a Lilian in soul, which is great. So we're going to call Zelma next. So this Upright Lion triggered 3 times, so we're going to give it +9. And then this Upright Lion triggered once, so we're going to give it +3. But now we've got Zelma in standby, so we're going to go ahead and use Zelma to put Selvia in the soul. And then we're going to call Lilian. All right, so now, you know what? Lilian is probably best to call here, actually, because we can have some space to call something else if necessary. But yeah, it's not going to matter too much. It's up to you where you want to call it as well. So now from hand, we're going to call another Zelma. And with this Zelma, we're going to put our other Zelma into the soul. And then we're going to call, you can call Zelma back, but here I think actually we're going to call, actually you can't call Zelma back. I don't know why I just said that. We're actually going to call Emil. So now both of these are going to get +3. And then we're going to use Emil's ability, just that we're filtering those triggers. We're filtering down our deck to have mostly triggers. So looking at what we've got here, this is terrific. This is exactly what we're looking for. So we're going to go ahead and put a Lilian and a Serne in the soul. That way we're getting the lowest value shields in our soul, and whatever we drive check has the highest shield based on what we saw there. And our deck's getting a little thin now, so that's going to be prime time for our drive check and our multi-attack here. All right, and lastly, we're going to call, let's see here. I think we're going to call Dorian from hand, just so that we can get it in the soul with one of our other abilities. But typically, it's not great to have Dorian. But in this case, that's just what we're left with, so it's not a huge deal. All right, and now we're all set. We're ready to go into our turn. So this is going to be a pretty crazy turn. The best thing to start out with is to see if your Dorian can hit on its own. If not, you can choose to call something from your hand to boost. But I do think that it depends on what your opponent's situation is looking like. So do keep that in mind. But of course, you can decide to attack in whatever order you want. So let's say we attack with that, and then we're going to attack their Vanguard with our Darklord Princess. And at the end of the battle, we're going to have 2 auto abilities triggering. We're gonna have the Darklord Princess, and we're gonna have the Cerné. So do keep that in mind. So they decided to do what they want, and then we're gonna go to our triple drive. So first check is a crit. So based on how they guarded, we're gonna put the power at some point on some unit, pardon me, but usually it's not gonna be the Vanguard. Usually it's gonna be one of the upright lines. So let's go ahead and put it on this upright line. And then the crit, let's say we put the crit on, let's say we put the crit on this upright line, because that's pretty much the best place to put it, generally speaking. All right, so that's gonna go to our hand. Then we got second check, another crit, not uncommon because we use Emil to filter out the deck, as I mentioned before. So let's put the +10 on this upright line, and also the crit. And then our third check is a heal, which most likely we'll be able to heal based on how much damage they might have. Let's put the power on this upright line. I hope you guys are starting to see the theme where we're trying to stack those upright lines, and really PGs are their only option in order to survive this most of the time, because both these upright lines now have a crit, and they're probably at 3 damage. So they retire, their guardians are retired now. Now we're going to do our end of battle abilities. The first one you should normally do is Darklord Princess, so we're going to do that. We're going to flip over a G unit in our G zone, so we're going to flip over a Harri Stride, and then we're going to also stride that same card, and then we're going to call Darklord Princess to a rearguard circle. So this stands, and then we're going to use Cerné's ability. At the end of the battle boosted, we're going to discard a card, so of course we're going to discard the Marichka that we don't need anymore. We're going to put Cerné in the soul, and then here's where things start getting pretty complicated. So we're going to go ahead and call this Zelma. All right, so Zelma's called from soul. We can actually call the Zelma right here because we don't really need Darklord Princess. So we're going to call the Zelma over the Darklord Princess. So the Darklord Princess goes to the G zone. All right, both of these upright lines are going to get +3. And you guys can't even see the dice. That's how crazy this is getting. But both of the upright lines are going to get +3. And then Zelma's ability is going to trigger. We're going to put the Dorian into the soul. And then we're going to call something else out. It doesn't really matter what we call out, but in this case, we'd like to call out a Cerné, because we do want the Cerné to be behind the Vanguard again. That way we'll be able to get a similar multi-attack as we did the previous time. So now both our upright lines are going to get +3 again. And then we decide to attack, let's say, with our rear guard here, Lilian. Of course, it's not a bad idea to put the power that we got off the triggers on the Lilian, because Lilian will go away because of Harri's skill. So Lilian's going to get +10 because we have 4 different names in our soul. So it's going to be 19 + 7, 26. They decide to do what they want. And then we're going to go ahead and attack with our Harri. So Harri is not as stacked as our other units are going to be, but the main goal of Harri is to use its on-attack skill. We're going to counterblast 1, put 2 of our rear guards into our soul. So we're going to put the Lilian and Zelma column into the soul. And then we're going to also flip a Harri in our G zone. Let me go ahead and do that. So this is our Harri that's in our G zone. We're going to flip that over. And by the way, if you wanted to know what our face-up G zone is like, this is our face-up G zone currently. Now we're going to call 3 units from soul to rearguard circle. So right here, we're seeking to call things that, pardon me, trigger their abilities when called by the ability of your Vanguard with Silver Thorn, which we do have because of the Heart card. So we're going to call an Ana, we're going to call a Marichka, and you can decide to call a third card, but honestly, sometimes it's not as advisable to do so. In this case, I'll decide to call the Zelma though, because we do want to stack that. Upright line to as much power as we can, because we're seeking to finish off our opponent on this turn. So now we've called 3 cards. Our upright lines are going to get +9 each. So let me get the dice here. This gets pretty crazy on these turns. So hopefully you can see the dice that are on our upright lines. And then we're going to trigger all these auto abilities that we have in standby, which is each of these. So first, we're going to do the Zelma, okay? So Zelma is going to put the other Zelma into the soul. Oh, you know what? Did I mess this up? let's see. Let's see, Zelma should be, you know what? So actually one of the things that you can do, you can decide actually not to call this Zelma. And you'll see why pretty soon here. But let's just say we didn't call that Zelma. So we're going to take away the +3 that we put on both upright lines for now. But let's next go ahead and use Marichka's skill. We're going to go ahead and call the Salvia on, oh, I think I knew why I was doing that. So, yeah, never mind. We're going to keep the Zelma. Sorry about that. I was trying to remember why I did that, and I think I forgot as I was putting the dice on. So let me bring back the +3s. So first we're going to use Marichka's skill. The thing about this combo is that Marichka is going to go away, but it's not a huge deal because we don't need it that much. But basically we're going to use Marichka's skill first when placed by the ability of our Vanguard with Silver Thorn. We're going to call a grade 2 on top of it. So we're going to go ahead and call Salvia. You can also call Lilian, but we're going to call Salvia because we're going to do a lot more calling from Soul, as you'll see pretty soon. So it's going to get called over. Both these are going to get +3 again. And then we're going to use Zelma's skill to put the Salvia into the Soul. So keep in mind Salvia is still in standby. We're going to call Lilian. And then these upright lines are going to get +3 again. And then we're going to use Anna's skill to put both these into the Soul. And then we're going to countercharge. And then we still have a Salvia that is in standby currently. So we're going to go ahead and counterblast that for that Salvia. And then we're going to call 2 more units to Rearguard Circle. So we're going to go ahead and call out a Lilian. And we're going to call out a Zelma. So that's 2 more +3s. All right, and then we called a Zelma out again, so we're going to put the Lilian into the Soul. And of course, we're out of counterblast, so we're just going to call the Lilian right back out. And then finally, these upright lines are going to get another +3. So as you can see, this is way more power than our grade 3 turn. This is like the ceiling of this deck when you go for Harri. And this is not even the last of it. We're going to get the drive check from Harri, and we're also going to get the end of battle from Cerne, which allows us to go into more calling from Soul. So let's go ahead and resolve this Vanguard's attack. It's going to be 1 drive check. So we're going to drive check. We got a draw trigger. We're going to give the power to Lilian. And then we're going to draw a card. All right, that's going to do it for our drive check. And then at the end of the battle, we're going to discard a card from our hand to use Cerne. So we're going to discard the Salvia. We don't need a Salvia again. Put the Cerne into the Soul. And then here we're going to call out a Dorian. You can also decide to call out Lolotte, but in this case, you can also, basically you can prioritize whatever you like, whether you like to get more card draw at the end of the turn, or whether you like to get a counter charge back somehow. But in this case, I think it's fine to go for the Dorian, just so that we can bring all these back into the Soul. Now, unfortunately, Dorian does go away at the end of this turn. But typically, this is the last turn where your card draw will actually matter. After this point, you'll start to deck out, so you don't really want to go into Dorian anymore anyway. But we're going to call the Dorian. And then now we've got another +3 on our upright lines. So finally, let's now count the power that's on our upright lines here. So we've got a 10. So let me go ahead and transfer most of these 6s to the big die, which is the 10s place. So it's 6, 12, 18, 24, 32, 38, 44. Okay? So 44, that's 6 times 8. So we're going to put an extra, let's see, well, 44 and then 47. So let's put an extra 4 on here, so that's 5. And then we're going to leave 7 worth of the 1s place dice here. And all these go away. All right, and we'll do the same thing for our other upright line, 6, 12, 18, 24, 32, 38. And then another 8 is going to be 46. So +4, and then we're going to leave a 6 die, and the rest are going to go away. So wow, both of our upright lines are at 50k plus. Let's go ahead and count how much power they've got. So this upright line's got 57 +5, 62 plus 9 is going to be 71. This is swinging for 71 and 2 crit. They better have a perfect guard or they're dead, right? And then similarly, this is going to be swinging for, let's see, 56 plus 5, 61, plus 9 is 70. This one is 70 and 2 crit. Similarly, they have to get a perfect guard or die, right? And then, of course, our other units are going to swing if you'd like. This would be something like 26. And this one would be 36. So as you can see, the ceiling of this deck can get crazy turns. And now we're going to go ahead and go to the end of the turn. So we're going to get rid of all these dice. And now we're going to go ahead and put the Harri back in the G-Zone face up. That's the first thing that happens. Now the second thing is if we had any units that were called from Harri, then we have to put them back in the soul. If we can also choose to do that before or after we do Dorian. But let's go ahead and do Dorian first because we have 6 rear guards to put in the soul off of Dorian, which means we're not only going to draw 3 cards, we're also going to get a grade 3 from our soul to our hand. So this is the 6 units that we're going to put in the soul. So we draw 3. And because we put 4 or more, we're going to get a grade 3 from our soul to our hand. So of course this is going to be Venus Luquier. And then sadly, because we were not able to put Dorian into the soul, it's not really a sad thing because we'd be decking out if we use Dorian again anyway. But now Dorian's going to retire from rearguard circle. So now the cards in hand we have are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 cards in hand. Plus we've got a PG, a heal trigger for discarding for heal for a G Guardian, and then we've got another PG. And look, we're at only 2 damage. So we'll basically be able to survive for sure next turn. And then thinking about what we can go into next turn, since we'd probably be close to decking out looking at the number of cards in our deck, we can go into next turn our stride called Fairfield. And Fairfield is going to allow us to put back a card from our soul and drop some back into the deck, which looking at our soul, we do have a critical trigger in our soul from earlier. That was when we did Marechika. And looking at our drop zone, we have only heal triggers in our drop zone, but depending on what we guard with, we can easily get a trigger that we like back into our deck. So we could guard with the critical trigger here, get that back in our deck with Fairfield, and then proceed to pop off again. So as you saw, this is pretty much the ceiling of this deck's power. This is not even the highest power that this deck can reach, because when you have 3 Excel circles, you can get 3 Upright Lions, and they can all reach the same power as we saw with this past turn. But typically 2 Upright Lions is all you need. They're pretty much it's gonna be hard for them to deal with that because you have a bunch of attacks that they have to deal with, and it's just overwhelming for the opponent, plus the amount of card advantage you get at the end of the turn too. Alright, so after guarding after that previous turn we did with Harri, here's our current game state. We've got 5 cards in hand after having had the number of cards that we had in the previous combo, and we had to guard with both of our perfect guards, as well as the critical trigger, a heal trigger that we used to discard to go into Demonic Wandering Dragon, and we use Wandering Dragon to guard with a critical trigger, and then we also discarded Lolotte with the PG, and then we also still got +2/+5s, but we're still left in 5 cards in hand, so we can definitely finish them off if they didn't die from that previous combo. So let's go ahead and stand and draw. And looking at the number of cards in our deck, ordinarily we'd be in a deck out position if we were to proceed too hard into this turn, but we're going to make sure that won't happen with Fairfield. So we're going to ride into Venus Luquier once again. This is what we continued to recur off of cards like Dorian and Lolotte in the previous turns, so we're going to go ahead and get that Excel marker. Alright, and then we're going to draw a card. And then we're going to stride by discarding the Venus Luquier's cost, and we're going to go into Fairfield. Now, you can also decide to stay on the Venus Luquier, but Fairfield is perfect because our deck is thin, and we're going to be able to see a trigger very likely. So Fairfield is the card we're going into. Now we're going to proceed to main phase. We're going to go ahead and call the upright line that we have in hand to the Excel circle. And then we're going to go ahead and use Fairfield's ability right away. So looking at our hand, we can counterblast 2. We're going to counterblast 2, and then we choose a card from our drop zone and soul and return them to the deck. So we're going to return, of course, the crits. We've got another crit in the soul here, so we're going to return that to the deck too. Then we shuffle the deck. We choose a card from our soul to call it to the rearguard circle. All right, we're going to give this a cut. The deck is tiny right now. We're going to choose a card from our soul to call to the rearguard circle. We're obviously going to call an upright line. That upright line is going to get plus 10k and a crit. Let me get the critical. There we go. And then it's also going to get the ability to we activate Soul Blast 2, and it gets plus 5 and can't be chosen by card effects. So we're prepared to go into a full pop-off here, but don't forget that we did call from Soul, so we're going to be able to get plus 3 on the upright line we called from hand before. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and finish off this combo. We're going to go ahead and call the Dixie from hand that we saved. We're going to put it on the top of the deck to activate its skill. We're going to shuffle. Alright. And then we're going to call a Selvia. You can call a Selvia or a Zelma from Soul. Now here I think we can call an upright line safely because we do have enough. We do have one more Dixie in our hand to be able to call the Selvia with that one. So we're going to go ahead and call the upright line. This upright line is going to get plus 3, as well as the upright line that we called from the Soul with Fairfield. Alright, and now let's go ahead and call from hand. So ideally, you want to call from hand Irina just to make sure that you have another card to put into Soul when you call Zelma. But also, don't forget that we do have Selvia, which can call Zelma herself. So we're just going to go ahead and call Selvia directly. We're not going to call the Irina, just in case we do have some, because I know that our deck is going to be filled with a lot of triggers. It's going to be filled with at least 4 triggers. And looking at how big our deck is right now, we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we have 10 cards in our deck still. So I don't know if we really want to call Irina from hand in this situation because we might hit a trigger and it's not going to be very good for us. So let's go ahead and call the Selvia from Soul. Each of these upright lines is going to get plus 3. And Selvia's skill is also in standby, so don't forget that. So let's go ahead and use Selvia's skill to counterblast 1. And then we're going to call 2 more units to rearguard circle. In this case, it's best to call 2 Zelmas. All right. So now both of our upright lines are going to get plus 6, or all of our upright lines, pardon me, not just both. We have 3, I have to remember now. So clearly, if our opponent survived our last combo that I showed with the Harri, then they're probably not going to survive this one. I'll tell you that. So we're going to go ahead and put we're going to put Selvia into Soul with one of the Zelmas. So we're going to use this Zelma to put Selvia in the Soul. And then we're going to call a, let's see here. We can call a Cerne. And then each of these get plus 3. And then we're going to use the other Zelma to put this in the Soul. And we're going to call Lilian. You could also decide to call you can also decide to call Emil, but I do not think that's necessary. I think most of our deck is triggers. We'll surely hit a trigger somehow with what we've got set up here. And now let's go ahead and use our Fairfield's the card that we call from Fairfield skill. We're going to go ahead and Soul Blast a number of cards to get our upright line up to as much power as we'd like, and make sure that it can't be chosen by card effects, so that it can't be retired by like a Denial Griffin play or such. So we're going to Soul Blast 1, 2, and 3, 4. We're just getting rid of cards that we no longer need because look, we still have an Anna in the Soul, we still have a Lolotte in the Soul, and then the rest I think we're good. So we're basically just going to Soul Blast 4. And that'll give the upright line plus 10 in total. And it cannot be chosen by card effects. Alrighty, and I think we're all set up now to go into our turn. You could also decide to call Irina, but again, as I mentioned earlier, we're not really looking to get a trigger in the Soul, because we're pretty likely to pull a trigger off of this drive check. So you can decide to attack with it whatever you'd like first, but keep in mind we have Cerne available, and we do want to make sure that our upright lines get charged up by what we're going to call off of Cerne. So we attack their Vanguard. This is going to be 34, as usual. Then we're going to go to our drive check here. So we're going to do our first check, a draw trigger. So unfortunate that a draw trigger was still in our deck, because that means we might draw into a crit trigger. We're hoping for the best, but you know, anything can happen. So it's unfortunate, but we'll just have to live with this. So we're going to have the power to Lilian, and then we draw. And of course, we drew the crit as expected. The second check's a crit, thankfully. So looking at this board, I think I want to put the power on Lilian, but I want to give the crit to one of our upright lines. That way, and just in case they haven't, just in case they perfect guarded this attack, that way we can still get some pressure on our other rear guards, and Lilian can at least match the other upright lines eventually. So then our third check is not a crit, sadly. So a little bit of a whiff on that drive check, but it's all good. If we went for the Irina there, we would have been able to filter a little more. Same thing with the Emil, but you know, typically you can do Emil if you feel more comfortable. At least you'd be able to see the top 5, and indeed you would have been able to see that the draw trigger and the crit trigger were up there, along with the Marichka, which means we could put the Marichka in the soul, and that way we'd be able to avoid drive checking it off of the Fairfield drive check. So now at the end of the battle, we're going to go ahead and discard as cost for Cerne. We're going to put Cerne in the soul, and then we're going to call, of course, Zelma from our soul to rear guard circle. All right, and then now Zelma's ability is going to trigger. We're going to go ahead and put the other Zelma into the soul. And then we're going to call, oops, it's a little sticky. All right, we're going to go ahead and call, let's see. We're going to go ahead and call the Lilian, the other Lilian, to the soul. So each of these upright lines is going to get +6 because we called 2 things from that. And as you see, having 2 Zelma makes a huge difference. This is what allows us to get our full combo. But having 3 Zelma is even more insane. So, unfortunately, we didn't have 3 Zelma this game, but having the 2 Zelma is still very good. And then, of course, you would attack with the rest of these as normal. And indeed, verify that you have 4 different names in your soul, which we still do because we made sure not to soul blast all of them from Fairfield. So this Lilian is going to be swinging for 39. This Lilian is going to be swinging for 26. And then these upright lines, this one is going to be swinging for 32. This one for, let's see, 18 plus 20 is 38, 41, 46, 55, and 2 crit. And this one is going to be swinging for, let's see, 24, 29, 38. This one is going to be swinging for 38 and 2 crit. So again, pretty strong turn. And of course, they probably were already dead by the Harri turn. But if they didn't die, they'd have to deal with 3 upright lines, as you saw with this one. And this one wasn't even the upper limit of what this deck can achieve because, of course, our drive check wasn't as good as it could have been. Not to mention that we didn't have 3 Zelma in the soul, but of course 3 Zelma would have allowed us to get even more off of this turn. But in general, yeah, this is going to be the turn that you can pull off. They'd hopefully be dead by the end of this turn, which is why Fairfield is a good card in this deck. It allows you to finish very efficiently while avoiding decking out as well, because you fill those holes in your deck with triggers, and then that way you allow yourself to get them off of the Fairfield turn without decking out. So yeah, that's going to do it for the combos that I've shown. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like and a comment. Feel free to subscribe as well for more Vanguard and Yu-Gi-Oh videos. If you enjoyed it, thanks very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the future video.